What's up, guys? Tim Little, Matt Allen. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin, and welcome back to another episode of 2024's Holiday Buyer's Guide series. Now, today we are getting into $500 rod and reel combos.
We are super excited about these rods today. This is the core of our personal fishing, right? No agenda, not breaking down new rods, not trying this one or that one. Just, hey man, let's go fishing, grab some rods. This is the majority of what lands on the decks of our boats on a daily basis.
Yeah, let's start off. Give me the first rod.
You had a lot there.
Yeah. This is the stuff that we fish day in and day out. You know, whether I'm grabbing rods to jump in Matt's boat or vice versa, you know, these are rods that when we reach for the rod rack, typically we're grabbing.
Yep.
So to start off, got the Daiwa Tatula Elite AGS. This has the AGS guides on there, a lot lighter than the Elite, right? Having the AGS guides, you can feel the difference. I think it's like 40% lighter, they say, than Fuji guides. Then I paired that up with the Procyon MQ-LT. Again, another great feeling Daiwa reel, real easy, low inertia to turn that handle. It's that feel I like to have. And then paired up, like I said, with that AGS guides, that Tatula Elite. That is an awesome everyday spinning combo.
You know, you hear something like weight reduction in guides, and that doesn't sound important, right? You're like, oh yeah, whatever. That's like industry speak. But the reality of that much weight reduction out at the end of a rod is night and day difference in how that rod feels in the hand. First one up for me is the Shimano X-Pride. I mean, we have arrived at front and center core of our bass fishing style. The Shimano X-Pride B, this is the third generation of X-Prides we fished, are incredible. Full monocoque handle, so many different models to choose from. These rods at their price point fish as if they were an extra $200 more than they are, right? You're like, they start around $279 and they fish like they're mid $400+ rods. These are the main rods that I grab day in and day out because they are so light and so sensitive and so strong that unless it's a specific technique, I don't have a need to grab something beyond that. Now, when we get to techniques, that's a whole different animal, right? A hair jig rod, a specific jig rod, things like that. But for just day in and day out, they just cannot be touched. Paired up to that new Vanford, the combo is just amazing.
Yeah, when you say they can't be touched, I mean, all of these rods and reel combos we're going to talk about and later on some rods specifically, but day in and day out, that X-Pride, I mean, there's times, and I'm not even joking, there's times where it's like, do I grab that X-Pride or I grab my NRX Plus drop shot rod?
Right.
And I grab the X-Pride. It's just, it fishes a couple price points up. All right, next up, the Megabass Orochi series. This is another top of the line series from Megabass. What you get with Megabass, like I said yesterday, you get that fit and finish, you get that true JDM look and feel, and then paired that up with a Shimano Sustain. That is a step up from what Matt just talked about on that X-Pride. You throw this Sustain on an Orochi or an X-Pride, and it just even higher, right? But that Orochi, that whole line is an awesome line, has some of our favorite jig rods. I mean, it's a great line. But anyways, that Sustain, buttery smooth, super powerful. It is an awesome feeling combo.
So these combos, you know, if we've been doing a bunch of buyer's guides, most of you are familiar by now, but not everybody. Some are just coming in today. We do these for you to help you find the best options at every price point. We set the combos up by combining rod and reel, right? They're not actually a combo. And we do that to stay at or near those given price points. So you can take an X-Pride with a Vanford, it's an amazing combo, but if it's in your budget to take that Vanford off and put a Sustain on it, it takes it to a whole nother level. We're trying to keep those price points as pure as we can.
That's the foundation. That's where we base it off of, and we can make little adjustments from there.
Now, We're doing all of this in conjunction with Tackle Warehouse's sales, and that's so that you get this information at a time where you can also take advantage of it. Tackle Warehouse is not doing Black Friday this year. They're doing a Black November, and we're already halfway through it. There are sales, if you didn't know that, there's things that you already missed that won't go on sale again during this cycle, but there's a lot of things that are still coming. So rods are on sale right now, all of them. Whether or not they're advertised as on sale, they are on sale, and you can take advantage of that right now. Reels will be in the next segment. In just a few days, rods will go off sale, reels will go on. So keep that in mind. You'll have to make that on 2 different purchases, but you can get set up with those sales, and you're not in a one-day rush like in years past. All right, that's enough of the spinning rods. We had 3 spinning rods, now a couple of bait finesse rods. So still finesse fishing, but doing it with a bait caster. Again, we're in the core of the rods that we use day in and out. From Cashin, the Icon series, this is the 610 medium light. That 610 ml is the most universal of those Cashins in that bait finesse series. Although I will say the other one would be the 7.2 ml, which came out this year, a little bit longer, more distance, and the ability to throw everything. You can throw treble hook baits on it, you can throw jig hook baits on it, you can bait finesse flip with it, you can do everything with those rods. They're really remarkable. And then this is paired up to the Daiwa, the Tatula BF TW70, so the Tatula bait finesse reel, which is, of the 2 Daiwa bait finesse reels that are in the US market, it is the much more Americanized one. It's the one that will cast farther, has more range, whereas the higher end is more of that traditional JDM bait finesse, you know, shorter cast, ultralight lines, things like that, pitching around cover, picking creeks apart. But that Tatula can send it. Just a fantastic combo.
Sticking with the bait finesse train, we're talking the X Pride. This is the true bait finesse rod from X Pride. It's the 6.8 light bait finesse rod. Again, it's a true bait finesse rod. You know, a lot of rods came out in the beginning that had just put BFS on it or bait finesse on it.
Right, they just took whatever and slapped the name.
But they added this one last year, maybe this year, I can't remember. But this is a true day in and day out bait finesse rod, and then paired that with the Corrado BFS reel, bait finesse reel. That goes hand in hand, but light Texas rig, light drop shot, or light Ned rigs, true tiny Texas rigs, 16th ounce, all of that good stuff that we talk about, that we rave about. This combo right here is made to do it.
All right, now jumping over into those traditional bait casters, right? Your traditional casting rods. From St. Croix, we've got the Legend Tournament Series. Just like all the other St. Croix, you have an unbelievable number of options in this series. It is mind-boggling how many different things you have to choose from. And there are some true gems in that lineup. But the Legend Tournament is an incredibly comfortable line of rods to fish. They're light, they're sensitive, and relative to the other Legend series, they are extremely affordable. You know, going to be more than a Victory, but way less than the rest of the Legends. Yeah. Legend Elite, Legend Extreme. Just a phenomenal line of rods. Some amazing crankbait actions in there, a variety of different things. Paired that up to that Tatula SVTW, which opens the door for comfortably fishing a lot of lighter weight baits really, really well. Just a fantastic combo and a lot of fun to fish.
Already talked about it. Maybe I didn't. The Mega Bass, yeah, spinning Orochi. Again, that true JDM fit and finish. That Orochi XX line is just an amazing line. Has some of our favorite models, jig fishing models in it.
Jig rod ever built.
The Braillist. It is a true cork, you know, full handle cork. It just has that feel to it, that fit and finish and that feel
all
to
the
it.
things.
It's hard to explain until you hold one in your hand. But this is an amazing line of rods. Super sensitive, super light. They look great, they feel great, and then paired that up with the Corrado 150. Again, it's a downsize. It's not necessarily a full frame reel. It's a little bit smaller than a full frame reel, but it's that 150 MGL, cast farther. It's buttery smooth, paired up with an Orochi. This is an awesome, awesome combo.
I'm amused every time you grab a reel and you're like, it's so smooth, and you spin it, and because I type braid deleter and you hear my leaders clack inside there. All right, next one up, jumping back to Shimano X-Pride again, but now in the casting rods. Everything that I've already said is true. The monocoque handles are amazing. The way they transmit sensitivity is phenomenal. These rods are just so sensitive for the price. It's crazy. And there are so many models in there that we take advantage of on a daily basis. Paired up to a Corrado 70 MGL, so that smaller frame, the smallest of the frames, but still that MGL spool. You can literally spool that thing on a cast with a lot of different baits. It's amazing how far they will throw. And I can't stress that enough. That has been such a player in my personal fishing and in our fishing the last few years. Every time I get on the boat with somebody, I feel like I can outcast them by 5 to 20 yards, depending on what their gear is like. And everyone is it always comes up in conversation. And it's because we have latched onto those MGL spools. And of course, we know how to adjust our reels and dial in our brakes and all that, but those MGL spools, it's a significant difference. If you have not tried it and you've thought about it, if it ends in MGL, it is worth the spend above whatever you're looking at.
It's so funny to mention that, because just last week, we were fishing with some, Elite Series guys, and I was out casting one of the guys by like a good 10 yards, and he came, what reel is that? It just happens. So those things are awesome. And that 70 size, it doesn't matter if you're throwing on a little finesse rod or a full size, flip and stick. It just feels so comfortable in the hand. Speaking of comfortable in the hand, this guy right here, this is the Fenwick Elite line of rods, and this is newer to us. A couple years ago, I think if you kind of went into this tangent yesterday, yeah. We picked up some of the new Fenwick rods. Both Matt and I grew up fishing Fenwick rods. I used to throw a Fenwick spinning rod with a hula popper on it, and when I was pond fishing when I was like 6 and 7 years old. But Fenwick is a brand that's been around forever, and they did a complete revamp. A whole bunch of different lines of rods, but this Elite Series, I think it's second from the top. It's under world class. Extremely comfortable in the hand, nice cork handles, sensitive, light, and paired that up with the Concept C2. Now this is a reel that we talked about quite a bit last year. It's from 13 Fishing. It doesn't break the bank, but it's one of the lightest reels out of all of these reels. So if you don't want to spend top dollar to get like an Aldebaran or something like that, you can compete as far as weight-wise with this guy right here. It's a great reel, good drag, feels really good, casts really good. But again, those Elite rods have been blown away with that entire lineup.
All right, one more combo here, and then we're going to talk some very specific models. So again, this is where we live day in and day out in our fishing, right? So our knowledge base model to model to model to model is very deep. And as a result, we decided we have limited room in the video description, right? But in every video description below the video, today included, we link everything we're talking about in the order that we talk about it, so that you can follow those links straight to Tackle Warehouse. It's not confusing. You don't have to memorize what it is or write it down. Every link goes straight there to what we just discussed. We'll have a little bit of room at the bottom of this description, and we're going to fill it with these single rods. And what these are is specific rods that are unbelievable standouts amongst their own line. So much so that it's worth stopping and talking about. Now, the last combo here from G. Loomis, that is a line that we have been pretty silent on up until now. And it's not because Loomis aren't mind-blowing. It's because they don't do lower end, lower price point rods. So we finally arrived in the guides where we can start talking Loomis too. This is from G. Loomis, the IMX Pro line of rods. The last few days we've talked about how St. Croix can spin your heads with a number of models. IMX Pro, off the charts. I mean, do you need 8 crankbait models? Do you need a bunch of swim bait models, right? There's half a dozen MBR. I mean, it's unbelievable how many options you have. And it's because you've arrived at that price point where even the finest of anglers in the world, those guys that are like so dialed and want such specific things, this is that price point where a lot of them spend a lot of their time. So actions are drilled down so far at this price point for very specific things. And then again, don't need to spend a lot of time on the reel because this is a Corrado 70 MGL again, just that unbelievable workhorse that can send it. And one thing about that 70 size that I think people misunderstand, people see a 70 and they think finesse reel. And you can finesse with them because that smaller spool has a very fast startup speed. So you can throw a lot of really light stuff on them. But I power fish with them too, right? I do some cranking on them.
It's on your lipless rod.
Exactly. It's on my lipless rod. I throw chatterbaits on 70 size reels a lot because again, they do start up so quick that you can just super comfortable, super accurate casting. Don't be limited by its size. If you don't need some giant spool, don't do it. Go to that smaller spool and your fishability gets very comfortable.
Yeah, flipping, pitching, punching. It's so easy just to, you don't need a full-size reel unless you need that line capacity, you know, for deep cranking, something like that. But all right, so now we're getting to the point of the video where we're going to talk about specific models. And quite honestly, it's hard. When we're holding up an Orochi, we're like, yeah, the entire line is so great. And in the back of our head, we're like, we like this model, we like this model, we like this model. Well, now we're going to tell you why. All right, starting off, we're talking the X-Pride 7.2 medium light. This is an awesome rod. It is super universal. This for me is my, even though it's not a bait finesse rod, I put a bait finesse reel on it, and this is what I throw my guppy head swim baits on, my underspins, blade baits, micro jigs, light top waters.
Tailspins.
I mean, not all with a bait finesse reel, but with that swim bait, a bait finesse reel, I can basically spool a 2.8 Kitech and I can cast it farther than I could with any spinning rod. So that is my bait finesse setup for, it's not really a bait finesse setup, but it's my setup for my finesse swim bait setup. But the 7.2 medium light, blade baits, micro jigs, Texas rigs, any of that type of fishing, this rod is remarkable at. So it's one rod that can do a ton of different things. Interchange it with different reels, whether you want to topwater fish or bait finesse fish. This is an awesome standout in that entire, I mean, the whole lineup's good, but this is a standout.
You know, at this price point, you're talking about an investment, right? I mean, at any price point, you're talking about an investment. But when you get up here, it's important that those rods do more than one thing, right? You don't want to drop $200 or $300 on a rod that you're going to pick up one time a year for one thing. And that's why we want to show you some of these models that can do the most for you. That 7.2 ML, in my opinion, is the single most underrated rod in the entire Shimano X-Pride line. It's not necessarily the best, like the jerkbait rod blows my mind, right? But the 7.2 ML is the one that people ignore and does the most. I think it can do more things than any other X-Pride.
More things well.
Yes. Next one up. Back to that Orochi XX, specifically the Braillist. The Braillist, as many of you know, is my favorite jig rod of all time. It's an incredible jig rod for throwing those medium to heavy hooked jigs. So like 1/2 ounce to 3/4 pitching jigs, flipping jigs, bigger swim jigs, things like that. It's incredible for that. But you may not realize that I also Texas rig on this rod a lot. It's my favorite rod, arguably, at least at this price point, for throwing a 6-inch mag draft. It has become one of my favorite rods for throwing a 168 S-Waver. Those are treble hooked baits, but the rod is capable of doing both because it has such a unique taper, and that is what makes it so special.
sticking with the X Pride line, we couldn't talk about the 7.2 medium light without talking about the 610 medium.
Ah, there it is.
This has been a rod that, I mean, it basically put X Pride on the map. I mean, I feel like this rod was the original standout for jerkbaits, but it does so much more than just throw a jerkbait. I mean, it throws a jerkbait extremely well, but you can throw your lighter swim baits on it. You can throw your finesse football jigs on it. You can throw top water on it. It does a lot of things extremely well, but it is the jerkbait rod. And I mean, I got 3 of them. I use them for so many different things. They're super universal, and it's really good at a handful of things. So
you put a 610 medium and a 7.2 ML on your
you're
deck,
good to go.
and you've covered the vast majority of things. All right. From St. Croix, Legend Tournament. And the reason why Legend Tournament is now we're up high enough that sensitivity is off the charts. You can do everything you're going to need to do there. This is the 7.4 Heavy Fast. Within the entire world of St. Croix, this is my single favorite rod action. I like this one the most. It shines for swimming a jig. It shines, I'm thinking like Florida fishing, right? Throwing like a 4/0 beast hook, throwing a 5/0 flashy swimmer, small swim baits. Of course, you can throw jigs on it. I spend a lot of time frogging with it. It's not my frog rod, but it's an amazing backup frog rod. So if I get on a frog bite, I'll end up putting a frog on here as well. It's just that do everything heavy cover rod, and it just does an amazing job of it.
All right, next up for me, or for us, because this is really a rod that you put in my hands that I really liked. It's the 844C MBR Mag Bass rod, the Loomis. This is a rod that is super universal. It's got a swimbait icon on the logo on the rod, but you can do so much more with it. You can top water fish. I think it's your favorite top water rod, right?
843 and 844.
They have a
spinnerbait,
right? Yeah, they have such a unique action in the mid section of the blank, just a slower taper, but you can do a lot of things with again, you can jig fish on it, you can do your top waters, your smaller swim baits, your S wavers, that sort of stuff. It's a unique action. Typically in Loomis, you get those very technique specific rods, right? You get those, like you said, you can have 8 different crankbait models, but this is a rod in that line where you can do a lot of things. So it is a pricey rod. It's super light, super sensitive, but you can do a lot of different things. You could cut off a glide bait and put a top water on it, or put a jig on it, or a spinner bait, right? It's a rod that you're gonna pay for, but it's going to do a lot of things extremely well.
Next one up, Megabass Orochi XX. We've got the Ronin. The Ronin is the only spinning rod that I currently use for throwing a jerkbait. It is absolutely dialed for jerkbait fishing. I like to throw a jerkbait on a bait caster most of the time, but sometimes I switch over to spinning, and there's a lot of people that's how they like to fish them. So we went on a mission looking for the best option and came up with that Ronin. That said, it can do a lot of things. You can throw a shaky head on it. I have caught a pile of fish strolling with it. Turned out to be really, really good for that. You just have so many options. Great rod for throwing a Nico rig. Great rod for throwing a tube. There are a lot of things that you can do. And at that price point, a lot of times that's what we're looking for.
Speaking of strolling, this rod right here, I don't know if they're the first in the US market to have solid tip for bass fishing, but the X Pride, the 610 medium SB solid tip rod. It comes in a medium heavy and a medium. Yep. This is the medium. This is an awesome, awesome strolling rod. It has that solid tip, right? So you get a ton of quick action, which also works extremely well for drop shotting, for Ned rigging. So it doesn't just have to be a jig and minnow type rod. You can do a lot of your favorite finesse techniques on this guy right here. Again, it's that same old X Pride spiel. Just a lot of great rods in the lineup, and this is one of our favorites.
Jumping over to Fenwick.
How did I end up with all the
Fenwick
X-Prides?
Elite. Here, I'll trade you.
Go for it. You're already tired.
7-1 medium heavy. I can't believe I got that far without hitting a medium heavy like this. The 7-1 medium heavy is like the bread and butter of bass fishing, right? So that rod right there, you're going to shine with a Texas rig, but it'll throw gravity baits or poop baits, right? It'll throw a spinner bait. It'll throw single swim baits, so like chucking and winding a Kitech or a Swammer on a jig head. All of those things, phenomenal for working soft jerk baits around cover. Did I say light Texas rigs? So many different things that you can do with that one rod model. All right, back to you.
Another X-Pride for you. So we just talked about the solid tip spinner rod. Now we're talking about the 7.7 heavy. This is a workhorse of a rod. So if you want to do light flipping or pitching, it's my favorite rod to throw like a burrito swim bait on or an A-rig on. So if you're a big bait fisherman or a true power fisherman where you need to do that light flipping, pitching, or even punching, this thing has the backbone to do it. It's got a softened up tip where you can throw your mid to full size A-rigs, your I'm gonna say
mid-size glides.
Yeah,
too.
mid-size glides.
Yep.
It's got a unique action in the midsection where you won't lose a lot of those treble hook baits, especially big fish when they come up and start head shaking. It loads and unloads slow enough that those fish stay pegged, but it has enough power in the lower section, enough backbone to really set that Texas rig hook when you're flipping or punching. So this guy right here is an amazing rod in the lineup.
It's also the only rod that I throw a 5-inch burrito on. Like those two things are glued together.
Burrito? I think it's a burrito.
I think you did say that. Yeah. The 5-inch specifically though, I've never found a better rod for throwing that bait. It's so good.
Well, there they are, guys. There are, we're doing these rod and reel combos and we're like, this combo is really good with this reel, but those are specific models in each of those lines that are standouts in the entire lines are good, right? Yep. They're all extremely sensitive, durable, but those are the standouts if you want technique specific stuff or rods that, we understand that these rods are expensive. If you want a rod where you can stroll but do multiple techniques with, a lot of these rods that we just mentioned will do just that. Multiple techniques, they do them really, really well.
All right, now, again, we're going 7 days a week. Tomorrow, we are talking the high-end stuff. No holds barred, no price limits. Tim and I will each pick a handful of our favorites. That's probably the format we'll use, and we'll explain why we chose those. But in the video description, we'll link all of these for you. Again, you can take advantage of those sales right now. If you're seeing this a little late and the sale has ended, I'm sorry. We did the best we could for you. But if you're watching it on time, you are good to go. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you tomorrow.